Hello everyone, today I have great pleasure to introduce our new member, Pika Sen. She is a consultant, a speech language pathologist, and educationalist. Hi, Pika, it's a great pleasure to have you in our community.
Thank you, Edward. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So please, Pika, share a little bit more about story, how you became who you are today, and what kind of experience you would like to share with our group.
Definitely. Well, I am a speech therapist. I started practicing in 1994. I grew up in Australia, and I moved to Singapore in 1994 to work as a speech therapist. And I started working in private hospitals and then in the public hospitals. And I was starting to realize that as a speech therapist, working with children was my passion. So I kept working with children, and I decided that in the hospital setting, I wasn't able to give them the quality that I thought they deserved. So I decided back in 1998 to become an entrepreneur, start my own business, and start a small speech pathology clinic where I could see children for therapy and just give them exactly what I thought they needed. Because then I was not bound by any of the hospital protocols or any protocols that I thought were in the interest of administration and efficiency rather than in the interest of efficacy of the child. Like what is going to be the most effective treatment for the child. So that's how I started my center, and it was called the Speech Pathology Center. I ran that for about 5 years on my own. And in 2002, 2003, I started to get a little bit itchy because I thought, you know what, a lot of the children that I was starting to see, I felt like they needed a more holistic approach to their overall development. So instead of just looking at them from the speech pathology point of view, like do they have speech issues, do they have autism, do they have developmental delays, do they have Down syndrome, these are the things that I've seen. I thought, you know what, they need help with their occupation, their writing, their understanding of the world, their social skills, their ability to read, their ability to write, their literacy development, their physical skills, their gross motor skills. And there didn't seem to be a place where I could send them in terms of education to give them all of this input. What would happen is that they would have to go to a particular school, and then the parents would have to drive them around to speech therapy, then drive them around for a different type of therapy here, there, and everywhere. So I noticed that was a pain point, perhaps my first few lessons in entrepreneurship. And I thought, you know what if I start something where I can make sure that a child comes in and we can take care of the child and their ecosystem. So what I did was I started what was known as the Accelerate program. And that ran from 2002 to around 2017. For 15 years, we saw over 2,000 families for integrated therapy services. So all under one roof, we would educate your child, and if your child had any special educational needs, we would take care of those. And if they had any therapy needs, we would take care of those. So that was very successful for many years, 15 years, and I was doing really well. We started a preschool alongside this special education center, so that the brothers and sisters, the parents would tell me, well, if I'm going to come all the way to your center, can you have something for my younger child or my older child? So we said, all right, we'll start a preschool, and we started a preschool called the Thinking Box, which was for the siblings of the children in the special needs program. So that was running very beautifully and all was going well, and we ran that for about 10 years. Then in 2017, I had a little bit of a curveball. I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. So at that point in time, my children were 13 and 8 years old. My son is 13 and my daughter was 8. And when I got diagnosed with this, one thing that I had realized that in my youthful invincibility, I'd been doing it for 20 years, and I thought, I'll be here for another 20 years doing this. I realized that I hadn't really planned for succession and leaving a legacy. And how was I going to, all this great work that I had done, where was it going to go? And it was really brought home to me when at my bedside in the hospital after my operation, when I had gone for an operation to deal with my breast cancer, one of the moms was sitting, one of my parents the families that come to see me, one of the moms was sitting on my bedside. She says, "Pika, you cannot die because I haven't downloaded everything in your brain yet." And I said, strange kind of compliment. Wasn't really sure what to do with that information. So I said, "Really? You're worried about that? That's what you're..." She said, "Yes, I'm very, very upset that, I might lose the gems of the 25 years of experience that you have. I was waiting to download all of that information. So you're not allowed to get sick and die or do any of that stuff right now." So I thought, oddly enough, that was a very strong impetus for me not to be defeatist in my approach to the cancer. And it was kind of repeated to me by quite a number of parents. "No, you can't leave just yet. Your work is not done. So you really have to keep going or find a way to keep going." So that sat in my mind for a while I was going through the treatment. Unfortunately, at the time that I was diagnosed, there was a lot of fear-based decision making. I'm not afraid to admit that because, when someone tells you you have cancer, you get scared. I think that's natural response. And especially I was thinking about my children. They were very young at the time, and I was homeschooling them. And of course, if you're homeschooling your children, it's a whole other ballgame when you get ill because you are no longer able to manage all of that. So during the treatment process, I was really very, very ill. And the reason, I don't know whether I had to go through all this treatment because I had the whole treatment. I had chemotherapy, I had radiation, I had surgery, I had everything. I think the universe was trying to force me to rest, to say, you need to really think about what you want to do once you come out of this journey. I'm forcing you to take this 6 months to a year to go through this treatment and really think about what you're doing and don't be on automatic pilot. So one pivotal moment that I remember is when I was sick with chemotherapy. My daughter was sitting next to me, and we were watching old home movies because I was just trying to cheer myself up, watching videos of the children when they were young. And I was watching it, and as I watched it, it occurred to me that when I was bringing up my own children who don't have any particular special needs, I was using all my therapeutic strategies with them. How to communicate better, how to socialize better, how to extend their language, how to give them lots of good questions to think about, how to make sure they have enough time to play, all these things that are kind of very popular at the moment. I realized that in bringing up my children, I had been doing all those things with them, even though they didn't have any particular needs. So my daughter said something to me. She said, "Mommy, when you go back to work," with full certainty, she said, "You're going to go back to work. When you go back to work, why don't you start a center where you can teach children the way you taught my brother and me, right? Using all the things you do, because I think you're not a normal teacher." So, again, I was taken aback by the insights that I got from my 8-year-old, who was also, incidentally, she's the one who found my lump in my breast. Which is also very sobering to have your 8-year-old discover your lump instead of you. So I thought that was very, very interesting. So when she did that, I let that gestate in my mind for a while. And when I had gotten over the mental aspects of the cancer diagnosis, and it had been about a year, and I was, recovering, my hair was starting to grow back, and I was starting to feel more like my old self, I took that under consideration, and I thought, yes, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a center where I can educate children the way I decided to educate mine. Because a lot of people look at the outcomes that I've had with my kids, and their natural inclination is to tell me, "Oh, but that's because your kids are geniuses." And I would like to say, I love my children deeply, but they're not geniuses. But what we have done by not going the traditional path of education is we have made sure that the children have a lot of time to explore who they are, but still have the academic rigor that they need to be accepted by regular society. I'm not a dreamer in that I understand that I can't change all the systems. But what I can do is tweak all the systems to give the children their cake and let them eat it too. So I said, you know what, you can get educated and do very well, but you also have to understand that there's lots of things that you can do without dealing with all the things that come with school. So one of the reasons that I had taken my children out of school is because I felt very strongly that there was a lot of time that they were wasting in the commute, in the waiting, in the fact that all education is geared towards the majority or the average. So if you're good at a particular subject, you still have to wait for everyone to catch up. If you're weak in a particular subject, you get left behind. So I thought there must be a way to even out the profile, because all of us as human beings have strengths and weaknesses. This is just how it is. So in all the things that have changed in the world, how we communicate, how we travel, how we talk to each other, how we educate ourselves, why hasn't education changed?
Yeah, it's a dinosaur.
Yeah, why hasn't education changed? And I feel like that is the only thing that we're doing almost exactly the same as we did it 100 years ago. So this dawned on me further when, as I recovered from my chemotherapy, I was teaching my son and I was thinking, gosh, this is almost exactly the same as what I learned 30 years ago. Why is it the same? Nothing else is the same. Even the telephone he uses is not the same. So why is what he's learning in school exactly the same? So these were all very big, huge red alerts to me that there was something that I needed to address here. And because I've always been very passion driven, right? I always want to do something that I feel like, you know what, I can lay my head down on the pillow at night and go, I did something useful today. And that's what's always been my primary motivator to do things. Certainly what I'm doing right now, which is promoting bespoke education, is extremely against the norm, right? The narrative of school is so strong in people's minds that if I tell them there's another way to get educated, you can still do your PSLE, your A-level, your O-level, your IGCSE, you can do all of these things without ever setting foot in school. Most of them just look at me like, it's impossible. No, it can't be done. So I used my children as proof of concept. So my children are the ones that I said, well, I have unfettered access to my children, and whatever I do with my children is completely my responsibility. So I use them as my role models to say they're well-adjusted, kids who care about the world, but still did very well academically, because I think that's a fear. If you don't go to school, how will you get accredited? How will you get the certificates that you need so that you can do higher studies? And I wanted to say the case against the current education system is very strong. There's a lot of literature. In fact, there is a brilliant book that was published in 2018 by Brian Kaplan called The Case Against Education, Why the Education System is a Waste of Money. Brilliantly researched, very, very excellent book that I recommend everybody read, only because it really stops you in your tracks. Why am I sending my child to school? What is it that they can't learn anywhere else? So the way I run Imagine If, which is the name of my center, the full name is Imagine If Bespoke Education Experience. Why did I call it that? Is because I feel like education should be an experience, right? It should be something experiential. The things that we teach over there are, I bring in entrepreneurs, I bring in special people from all kinds of different walks of life, and I get them to educate the children, not necessarily because they are teachers in their own right. Everybody's a teacher as far as I'm concerned, right? So I feel like if I can give those people the structure, I can create a human library of experiences, and people are the living books, and you get your information directly from the source. Do you want to know what it's like to be blind? Do you want to know what it's like to be a marginalized person, in the population? Do you want to know what it's like to live very well and have everything given to you? What are the pitfalls of that? Do you want to know what it's like to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer? What's the real story? Children who are heading in a certain direction, we give them all this information by creating a human library of experiences for them. And when you do that for children, an interesting thing happens. Their academics suddenly make sense to them. Why am I learning this? Well, because I want to do this.
Yeah, they get an understanding why they are doing something, not just because they are forced to do. I understand. When is the best time for parents who consider to try this bespoke education to send their children to a program like yours?
Definitely. So the best time is obviously when they're very, very young. So we see children from 14 months onwards. That's when we start. Because obviously if you start, then the way that you teach children becomes how they learn. Right? They learn through experience. They're not afraid to ask questions. They become very curious because we're not imposing our agenda on them, right? And then when it does come time for more formal academics, that usually around 7 years of age, this is when I start to see parents having difficulty because in Singapore specifically, 7 to 12 is compulsory education for Singapore citizens. Yeah. Right? International school students are the ones who are benefiting from bespoke education more at the moment because they don't have these parameters. 7 to 12 is the time when compulsory education kicks in, and we help parents who do not want to go down that road. We help them to navigate how to go down the homeschooling route, right? And how to understand what they need to do. And for here, I need to define what homeschooling is. Homeschooling is not necessarily doing everything yourself at home. Homeschooling means you then become the CEO of your child's education. Right? You interview the people, you decide who's going to educate your child, you set up the timetable, and you keep tweaking it and changing it for them as they grow and they change. Right? So that's how it works. So 3 main categories of children that I see will be the younger children under 7 to 12. Again, here I mostly see international school students unless parents want to go down that homeschooling route. And I'm currently in the midst of just explaining to them it's not as scary as it sounds, which I totally understand that it can be. But the growing number of people that are coming to see us are children in high school. Because from after the PSLE in Singapore, after the child is 12, when they're going to secondary school, they are no longer in compulsory education. So you can do whatever you like there. You can create your own education. And for instance, what I did with my son, who studied very hard and wanted to get into Raffles Institution, got in and realized that the culture didn't really suit him. So then he took the bespoke education route and managed to finish his A-levels by the time he was 16, so it was 2 years earlier, and went into the army 2 years early. His main goal was to do everything early so that he was not disadvantaged by being a male, so that he would go to uni at the same time as the girls. So I said, all right,
okay,
whatever is your motivation.
Disadvantage. Okay,
yes.
It's fun. Okay, and for all parents from Singapore, how they can find more information about your education and how they can apply. So can you share a little bit more information about where to start to research first?
Research about us. The best place to start is probably our social media pages. We have just recently, in the last 3 months, actually undergone a complete rebranding exercise. So just to accommodate the fact that we were getting a lot of older children. Before, we were seen as children who were much younger. But now, because we started to get a lot of inquiries from high school students, we thought, all right, we need to change our space a little bit so that it's suitable for both. Right? The unique situation of this, and if you want to look more into it, I would say the uniqueness of it is that we are extremely small. That's why we can keep it bespoke. If you're looking for really large schools with lots of facilities, that's not us. What we're doing is we're trying to keep the focus on the process of becoming educated. And we will look for you. Okay, you can go to a swimming pool, and we can get you to do taekwondo somewhere, and we can get you to do music somewhere, all within the building that we're in. All these things exist. So rather than as the parent paying for services that your child may or may not use, the tennis court in the school with the big facilities, how many times does your child use it? Right? So that's how we keep the cost
quality
high by keeping it really small. If you want to start researching it, I would invite anyone to send me an email, contact me, and I will talk you through it. Because this is a very hard thing to articulate to most parents, because it's almost like telling you to breathe differently. You've been breathing wrong all this time. Can you breathe differently? So that's what school is like when I tell them that becoming educated doesn't require school. We're very, very trained to think that. So yeah, social media will be the best place to start.
Thank you, Pika, for sharing this amazing information about the Bespoke education. And I think the credibility for you definitely can give that you everything what you are trying to help others tested on your own children, which is very important. Pika, thank you so much for sharing part of your amazing story. And I invite all people who are in Singapore, but also from other parts of the Asian world to check it out what Pika is doing in her association, and to contact her if you would like to know how your children can be curious about education, not just educate themselves because they have to. Thank you one more time, Pika.
Thank you so much, Edward. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.